Welcome to Thrashcast, episode 12. Tonight we're going to be discussing Testament's The Gathering. This is an album that some might consider death metal and some might consider thrash. But maybe after our talk tonight, we can figure out what we think it is, mostly death, thrash, or both. We'll find out. But before we start, so let me do our normal introductions and welcome in my two partners in crime, and that is Billy and Jim. And how are you guys doing tonight?
Doing well.
Awesome.
All right. So, as I mentioned, we're going to be discussing Testament's The Gathering. We'll also rank the studio albums of Testament, so that should be quite interesting too. But before we do, I just wanted to thank one of our subscribers, Mike Campbell, who actually last week commented on our Anthrax video and did successfully mention one of each of the bands that we all picked during our modern thrash contest, well, not contest, but our top 10 of modern thrash albums from the week before on Power Trip. So we want to thank you, Mike. We appreciate the comments, and Billy's going to be mailing you out that Milwaukee Metal Fest shirt. So
I wanted the shirt, man. But awesome. Yeah. I'm glad he got it. That's wicked. That's awesome. Thanks a lot for.
And luckily, the U.S. is not as far away as it could have been, so shipping will be somewhat reasonable.
Yeah, he was quite happy to get it.
Nice.
And he was a nice guy because he left a nice comment about us discussing Anthrax and how, we're all very respectful of each other and we weren't arguing, and even though we all have, diverse opinions. So I thought that was kind of nice of him.
Yep.
Cool.
He's a pretty cool dude.
Yep.
All right. So before we start, we'll also mention that you can find us at www.horrormetalsounds.com. You can also find us here on YouTube at KenG.2864 for Horror Metal Sounds. And you can also find an audio version of the show on Spotify. So if you just want to hear the show, you can certainly do that too. So what we're going to do right now, though, we're going to go into our usual segment, and that is our news segment. So, Jim, why don't you start us off with any news or what's spinning, or what you got going tonight?
Yeah, I don't really have much news. What I've been spinning is pretty cool, actually. I picked up a couple of CDs in the last couple of weeks. This one here, Shrapnel. This awesome. One here, Palace for the Insane. Wow, what an amazing album. And they have a new album coming out in Gravity this Friday on the 31st. So when this will premiere, their new album in Gravity will be coming out. So I've had the promo for In Gravity, and I got to admit, it's a little bit different than like this and the first three albums that they have are. This stuff's a lot heavier, and I find... they're a British UK band, and their new album's a little bit more melodic. It's still really, really cool, but a little bit of a difference. So I think fans will definitely see a difference. And I like this live album too. So I've been playing the hell out of Artillery live in Copan-Hell. So this is their 2024 release that was released a few months ago. And, a Danish thrash metal band. I absolutely love them. This live album kicks ass. And I mean, their last album, I think it was X, was super, super good. I'm sure you guys have probably seen them because I think they've been kind of bumming around Canada. And I know they've probably played Whacken a few times, Billy.
Yeah, they were I saw them just a couple of months ago, actually. They were here in the club. With Raven and Vicious Rumors.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yes.
And I've seen them previously a couple of times. Yeah, they've been to Toronto 2 or 3 times now. Like recently.
Do they have a good live set? Yeah.
They do.
I liked it. And I like the new singer. He's pretty good.
Yeah, the singer is really good. Yeah. But they're always changing guys. Okay.
So Jim, question for you.
A revolving door.
Question, Jim, on the Shrapnel. So you said it's a little I don't know what the word softer is, but was it like Evil, like where it's like their kind of black album? Like, are they doing the same thing?
Yeah, no one.
I don't know. I'm kind of like that. One of the songs on it has kind of a like the singer really. It's a lot more clear vocals, and it's not as heavy. There's some really heavy parts to it, but like I can't remember which song, but one of the songs has a bit of a Lane Staley kind of sound to it when he's singing, like, and it sounds almost like it could be off of an Alice in Chains album. So kind of a little bit of a different direction, I feel. It still was it's a kick-ass album, but compared to like Palace for the Insane, this thing just totally wails. I mean, that's a fast and heavy album. I find it's just changed maybe a little bit. From what I can tell, their members are the same, so it's not like they changed or anything. And they do have I just think it's maybe a little bit of a direction. It seems like I know in a lot of the promo material I've read that they've kind of grown and they've been dealing with a lot of stuff. So it could definitely be that
maturity is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, it makes sense.
But there's still some great thrash elements to it as well.
Okay. Cool.
Pretty cool.
Cool. All right. So I got a couple of it's all small stuff today. I think you guys might already have heard this, but I didn't realize that Anthrax and Kreator are touring Europe in December.
Oh.
So I was like, I didn't know that. So they've got dates. Well, I think they're starting in the UK on November 21st and going right into December 15th. So it's
nice.
like 18 dates in total. So I didn't know that. I was like, I wasn't even aware that Anthrax was touring. So I guess they will be going back out on the road. Hopefully with the new album out, I don't know, but that would be cool if they did. And then Kreator just also announced that they are getting ready to go back into the studio to record their new follow-up. Yeah, they're booking for 2024. So the album I've heard 2025 is going to be coming out. So that's good news. And then of course this week on the 24th, Evil Dead released Toxic Grace. That came out, so I gave it a listen to. It's kind of all right. There's a lot of negative comments online about Phil Flores, the vocalist, that I don't know what's happened there. He's not sounding so great, or he just doesn't seem like he's into it, but I think it's all right. There was actually one comment I was reading on Encyclopedia Metallum, and this guy just ripped. He wrote like 8 paragraphs and just ripped into it.
Really?
1%. Yeah, he gave it 1%, and he just basically like ripped into it for like 8 paragraphs. And I was like, okay, well, fair. Everyone has a right to an opinion. So I gave it a go, and it's all right. I can see what this guy was sort of saying, but I don't know if I'd be that harsh.
Oh man, that's bad news because I paid way too much money for a vinyl import of that thing. So
yeah, I don't know, Billy. You'd have to hear it. I mean, there are songs I didn't mind, but I do agree that the weakest link seems to be Phil Flores.
Really,
I don't know. This is my opinion. He was better on their previous album that they put out in 2020. I thought he was better on that one, but I don't know. You be the judge. Everyone's got to,
Yeah, I'll find out, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, sir. When you're ready, Billy, go ahead with your report for the Metal Fest that you just seen.
The World Traveler.
Yeah.
It sounds like I'm at school in my report. I'm in front of the class. So yeah, I just got back from Maryland Deathfest. So yeah, another great U.S. festival. This is one I've been to a few times. It's been going on for many years, and they've even expanded. There's one in California that they do, and they even did one in Montreal in the past, at least one. So that's pretty cool. The mainstay, though, is in Baltimore, a city I'm very familiar with because I used to, when I lived in Philly, would regularly go there for concerts. So I'm always pretty familiar with the area. But it's a pretty cool setup. I mean, it's a very different feel than like I was at Milwaukee Metal Fest the week before and Texas Hell's Heroes back in March. This thing in a way has a little bit more European feel. It's interesting the way they do it because it's kind of spread out across like many blocks in the city, and it's in many different venues, and there's outdoors, like 5 stages in total. You got inside like a really cool venues. They got outside stage. They got one big stage that's like under the canopy. So you get a lot of cool different feels like for the different shows. So that's really cool. The one thing I always tell people though, you got to be careful here with the tickets, because it's the most confusing setup I find, right? Like they have like the best is to get the VIP or not necessarily VIP, but the tickets that cover all venues and all days, right? Because once they go, you then are buying like tickets for certain venues. Right. So
Oh,
you can go to two of the venues, but not the other two, or
Mm,
vice versa, right? So you got to be a bit careful with that. Like
okay.
even now, like towards the end, the only tickets that were left only covered like two of the venues. So you couldn't go to the pre-show and you couldn't go to like two of the other venues. So it's very it gets confusing. So if you're gonna go, you got to buy tickets early before those all area full like 3 4 day passes run out. So I think that's kind of key. The other thing that makes this pretty unique, I guess, is it is called Maryland Deathfest. And so, it's not all death metal, right? Like, I
Mhm.
saw Forbidden, Sacrifice, and so they do tend to do thrash and they'll do black metal, but like it's not like usually a metal festival. It's a festival because there's something in for everybody, right? Like if you like power metal, you're covered. If you like traditional metal, you're covered. Like, this thing's a little bit more on the extreme metal side, right? So it tends to be like, probably one of the most accessible bands was something like Sodom or Sacrifice or Forbidden, right? And they were the minority. I mean, out of the 100 and some bands, like there must have been at least 50 I've never heard of.
wow.
Right. And you talk to people, you're like, oh yeah, like I gotta see like, the band X, and I'm like, what the hell is that? I never even heard of that before. So I'd say half the bands I watch, I never heard of them before. And I don't even remember part of the names because the names are so unusual.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I also get the sense, like based on my conversations, a lot of people travel to this. I think maybe because that specialized death metal, sort of lineup that people who love that, this is kind of the place to go. Like you can go to other festivals, but it's not going to be like predominantly this music. So, that's pretty cool. Just in terms of like some of the highlights, I guess. The pre-party was really cool. Sodom, Atheist, Midnight,
Ooh.
and probably two or three
Mhm.
other bands I wasn't too familiar with. So that was pretty cool. But that you needed a special ticket again, right? Like so not like Milwaukee Metal Fest where if you have your regular ticket you could go to the pre-fest. Here you had to get another ticket for that. So that's a bit of a negative. But then on the Thursday, you had Sodom performing again for the full festival. So kind of funny, like Sodom's a band who I haven't seen in like 10 years. And this is now 5 times that I've seen them this year. So that's
Cool.
kind of crazy. But yeah, no complaints from me on that front. But yeah, Thursday was good, and also a cool band I like called At War. I've never seen them
Oh,
live, and
yeah.
so
They're cool band.
yeah, so that was pretty cool. And then I was popping into death metal bands that I've never heard of before.
Okay.
So lots of new stuff. Friday was interesting. Probably saw like 7 or 8 bands. But Friday, to be honest, there wasn't a single band on the set list or the band list that I said I got to see. So it was kind of interesting. Again, that's how this festival is so focused, right? Any
Mm.
other festival, you guaranteed everybody would have had a couple bands they'll want to see. So yeah, I was just popping in and out and seeing different bands. Saturday was for me, I thought the best lineup that had like Forbidden and Sacrifice and Dismember and Vomitory. So that was a pretty packed day. Sunday was pretty unique in that it was very black metal focused. I mean, on the one stage you had all these like major bands like Primordial and Abath and Mayhem, and so a lot of the big hitters were there. But the two main bands for me were Bloodbath and our fellow Canadians, Gore Guts. Uh,
Cool.
so
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. So again, another great festival, like highly recommended. It's organized well. The staff is really nice. Security's really cool. You get over 100 bands. People are very friendly, so it's a great experience. So, but again, just be aware of the lineup, right? Take a look and make sure it's your thing, because it is very different than most festivals. So. Yeah, I'd say that's about it. I'm sure everyone will be putting out all their various content on it coming up, so people can check that out. So for me, my next stop, that's it for like 2 months. And then at the end of January, off to Germany for Wacken Open Air. And I'm actually considering, I've done this before, because literally like 4 days later is in the UK, the Bloodstock Festival. So
Oh, cool.
I've done
Yeah,
that twice before. So I'm thinking about maybe giving that a try again. The only downside is because they're so close. I mean, not only in geography, but in terms of dates, that most of the same bands do both festivals. So obviously some exceptions, but there's a lot of carryover, which is why I tend not to do it too often.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So are the bands, was there like a lot of local bands maybe? Because that's what it sounds like from what you're saying.
There definitely were some local bands, but like
Okay.
after later looking them up, a lot of these bands were not local. Like they
Oh,
were
okay,
US
okay.
bands or Europe, but I just never heard of them before.
Okay.
Like I'm a pretty big death metal fan, but like
Yeah.
I mean, this is, I guess, for the super diehard, some of these bands.
Okay. Well, it's cool they bring that many bands to the festival, so that's all right.
Yeah. And I guess you can't have like everybody, you can't have all the biggest names either, right? Like you've
No.
got to balance it out with smaller names,
Mhm.
just from like a cost perspective too.
Yeah, yeah, that would make sense.
And
Very
I'm
much
sure there
so.
was probably some carryover from the Milwaukee Metal Fest. Like you probably had a few bands come over from there.
Actually, very little, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, because it's just so specific, right?
yeah.
Like Milwaukee tended, even the death metal bands were, the more like popular ones.
Right.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, to be honest, I mean, maybe because I'm just on the spot, but there must have been somebody, but I can't think of a single carryover.
Oh,
Hmm.
really? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Nothing
Well,
even
that's all
comes to
right.
mind.
Oh, wow.
Mm.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Okay, Bill, is there anything else you want to add to
No, no,
the
that's
show?
good. I've taken
That's
enough
it.
time.
All right. No problem. All right, so we'll move into a bit of a bio on Testament before we start. So, and I'm sure most people know this already, so it's not like it's a big thing. Basically, the band's been around since 1983 in Oakland, California. They started out as Legacy, and then when they recorded their first album, The Legacy, about a month before the recording or before the album came out, they decided they had to change the name of the band because there was a jazz band named Legacy, which already had the was already named and already, I guess, had everything with that band. So they changed their name to Testament, which really at the end of the day, guys, makes the most sense. I think Testament sounds better than Legacy. I don't This doesn't sound like a metal band to me, but
No.
so I think that was the right thing to do at the time. Testament have 12 studio albums. So we decided to cover number 8, and that's The Gathering, released in 1999. So this was released on Spitfire Records, and this is pretty much, I guess you want to call it, a return to balls out thrash, considering that a few previous albums that they put out, like Low and The Ritual, yeah,
Mm.
they had a dip, and then Demonic, and then they came back with this rager of an album, if you want to call it that. It's also the album where they really dipped deep more into the death metal sound. So Chuck's vocals are pretty rich here, pretty monstrous, very growly, which makes it kind of unique. One other thing about this that I find interesting is that both James Murphy was playing on the album, and of course they brought in Dave Lombardo to play on drums, which is interesting. And I was reading that Chuck mentioned in I think it was like 2010, it was an interview he did, and he basically said that Dave was very instrumental for like the heavy sound on this album, which I thought was quite interesting. So apparently he was on a roll working with Peterson to come up with that kind of really heavy death metal sound. So it's kind of interesting. So that's cool. And then also on the album is Steve Digor, I can't even say it now. Giorgio on bass. So that's another kind of connection to death. So you had these kind of like players on the album to kind of really get that sound down. The other thing about this album there's a cover by Dave McKean. Dave's a longtime comic book artist who did Sandman for DC Comics. Dave did Demonic. Dave also worked on, I believe it's Low, not Ritual, but Low. And he also did Machine Head's Burn My Eyes, which is a cover that I really kind of like. I thought that was kind of cool. The album is also mixed and engineered by Andy Sneap and James Murphy, so that's kind of cool that they were both on it. Yeah, that's really good. So great production on that regards. And also, this was re-released in 2008 on Prosthetic Records with that extra song, the instrumental Hammer of the Gods. So I thought that was interesting to bring that up. And the other interesting fact about this, which we might talk later on tonight, is that when this album came out and they toured, at the end of the tour, Chuck found out that he had cancer. So that went on to almost like, 7, because I think it was 2020. Oh, no, sorry. 2001 is when the tour ended. So he would have dealt with cancer right up until the release of Formation of Damnation in 2008. So I thought that was quite interesting. But Chuck's still here, and it's important that he beat the cancer, and we still have Testament. But before we start on the album overview, I thought I'd ask you guys some questions. Now, when I pose these questions to you on our chat about it, I kind of realized that 1 and 2 are kind of the same question. So there are 3 questions, but 1 and 2 are the same. So the first question I was going to ask was, how do you think Testament fared in the 90s when, thrash metal took a backseat to grunge? Let's start with you, Jim. What do you think?
Yeah, after practice, you've got, I don't know, I think maybe a little bit of a kind of a different, I wouldn't necessarily call it a low time, I guess. I mean, it was changing. Everything was changing, but I mean, I went out and bought a lot of these albums just because I was totally into heavy metal. So of course, being able to go in the first one, Souls of Black, which I ran out and bought. I mean, the video first Souls of Black were getting a ton of airplay on Much Music and MTV. So they were really kind of, they were still punching it at that point. The Ritual, I bought it. Not one of my favorite albums. Low, bought it. Not one of my favorite albums, but kind of went through it. And then, they towards the end of it, where they finished up with this album in '99, I think they kind of went through Demonic. They went through a major blackened death metal sort of absolute vibe, and then sort of kind of brought it along for the Gathering, but kind of went back to a little bit of their thrash roots, which I was really excited for. And it seemed like this album, why it's so important, is it's kind of a return to form for me, even in '99. So, and then going on from there, yes, we know about the issues with Chuck, and the fact that there was a pretty big gap there. But I think the '90s, I was glad they were still putting out material. I just thought maybe it was just a weird time, I guess, and everybody's all the thrash, all the metal bands that were putting stuff out in the '90s after 1990, when you start hitting '92 and that, I think all bets were off with what a lot of bands were trying to do, because they were just trying to kind of stay afloat to some degree, because a lot of it kind of got pushed to the side with everything else that was going on. You had the unfortunate grunge era that came through, and I do like some grunge bands. I'm not totally shitting on it, but it kind of, and it was a fairly quick burn for them too. So you had the whole hair metal thing that kind of died off in the early '90s. So it was switching around quite a bit. But the albums, they're they're not my favorite, a lot of them, but coming back to the Gathering is where I think they just kind of turned it right back around.
Okay. Like, before I get to you, Billy, I'm just going to ask Jim this question because it's kind of the same question. So, what do you think they did right? I would assume you would think what they did right was the Gathering.
Yeah. But I like Demonic. I think there's a place for it. I think, I think death metal at the time of when Demonic came out, I think death metal, it's kind of weird because a lot of the death metal continued, but it kind of maybe was pushed a little bit more again to the side, a little bit more underground, but it was kind of underground to begin with. So I think it just kind of kept a steady growth of maybe a positive arc. It was just very, very lean. Like it was, but they were kind of used to that anyways. I'm not talking about like bands like Obituary and Death and that, but I'm talking about just, these bands that were kind of moving up a little bit. And I like the fact they brought that album out. I thought it was, it's kind of mid in my group of albums that I rank, but I kind of like it. It's got a different side to it. And I think, they were pretty talented. I think they pulled it off. I just think it's very, a lot of Testament fans, and I read online and stuff, a lot of Testament fans don't like it because it doesn't sound a lot like Testament, but I think there's a lot of good material there. But yeah, what I think was what they did right was they kind of kept the ship going long enough that they could come out with something like The Gathering.
Cool. Okay. And what about you, Billy?
Yeah, I mean, pretty mixed, not unlike many of their peers, right? Pretty mixed in the 90s. I think they tried like a lot of different things. I mean, take the Ritual, right? Like, and I'm leaving out Souls of Black, because 90 was still a good time, so not really in the spirit of the question, I don't think. But like 92's The Ritual, I mean I don't know, like they sort of did the that came out about a year after the Black album did. So like I always got the sense, I mean, part of the answer for them at that time was go, tone it down a bit, go a little bit more melodic. I mean, it's more mid-pace music. It did fairly well on the Billboard for them charts. Not that that matters, but it did sort of alienate a lot of old school fans, and myself included. I'm not a big fan of that. Then I think so that's going too far to the extreme on the soft end. Then I think they went too far to the extreme on the other end, and then so with I'm going to point to Demonic, right? Which I guess I didn't like as much as Jim, even though I'm a huge death metal fan. That had it was sort of a combo of death metal and heavy grooves, and even had like a industrial kind of a feel, even if that sounds right. It's just unusual, right? I don't think it's odd that a death metal fan might not like that album, but again, to me, it wasn't Testament, right? It was too far to one end, and The Ritual was too far to the other end, and so those two didn't work for me. Again, personal taste, but then I did think they struck the right balance on Low. It's not my favorite Testament album, but I actually like it. And then, like Jim, like I really like 99's The Gathering. I mean, that's hands down the best of the 90s, and not to give my ranking away, but that'll rank fairly highly on that, right? And so that really did bring back the best of the old school thrash sound, but it also kept the good parts of like Low and Demonic, right? You got Chuck still was using the death metal growls. Well, really worked well with the thrash. And back to your question, what did they do well? I think they didn't sit still, right? Whereas we saw in some of our bands, they just kept making the same album over and over in the 90s. That didn't work, right? And so they kept trying new things. So kudos to them. And not only trying new things, but bringing in like the best musicians, right?
Super groups.
Right, you got Steve DiGiorgio, you got Dave
Yeah.
Lombardo, you got James Murphy, John Tempesta. Like it was crazy the musicians that they were bringing in. I mean,
Yeah.
you already have an incredibly talented band, and they're bringing in people that are like, as talented or more talented than the people they replace. So
Mhm.
obviously, it shows the respect that Testament had, right?
Oh yeah.
Dave
Mhm.
Lombardo is going to join bands he respects, right? He's not
Sure.
looking just to, so I think that just reflects well on the band as well. So yeah, so overall, I'd say I excluded, like I said, Souls of Black. So 4 records, I give them a 50% success rating. 2 are good,
Cool.
2 are not good for me.
Yeah, there's a lot of diversity there, but I also think that like they wanted to do different things too. Because if you look at Peterson, he had that side project, his black metal band, Dragon Lord, which
Yeah.
I had those albums, and they're not bad. They're different, but I kind of like them. At least he wanted to experiment. And then Chuck also sang in that Dublin Death Patrol band as well, which was made up of all his like Oakland air, like I guess
Yeah.
Bay Area buddies. That album was kind of cool, lots of fun. So I mean, there's a lot of diversity with the music from that time. At least I thought, and then I think it is a stroke of genius to bring in James. Obviously, James Murphy's. We all know his pedigree, working with Death, working on Obituary. So, right guy to bring in to replace Skolnick. And then, yeah, even Skolnick, I mean, he left the band because he wanted to stretch his wings. He was really into like jazz music or jazz fusion, jazz rock. And he went off and did that for a few years. So it's kind of cool that as a band, they all wanted to do different things, but came back. So maybe that kind of reflects some of the diversity of the albums, I would think. Like low is actually better than the Ritual. I don't like the Ritual at all. I was listening to it this week and it's like, oh, it's
Yeah,
so
I'm the
black
same.
album. It's just not that
Yeah.
good. So at least with Low, there's like some really good songs on it. Like I like Dogface Gremlin. I think so.
Yeah.
Dogface Gods. That's
Odds.
a great song. Yeah, I love that song. So I mean, they did start things right. And then Demonic, I guess it's kind of okay. I think the one constant for me with what they did right is that Chuck's vocals never like went bad. Every
No.
album was great. He's such a great vocalist, and he hasn't lost a step. And even today, with the modern, like the 2.0 version of Testament, he hasn't lost a step. That guy is
No.
one hell of a vocalist, and he might be the best thrash metal vocalist in thrash metal, but the most consistent, I would think, like next to say Blitz, who's fairly consistent. But yeah, so they did. I think they did do those things right, at least in part. And I think the supergroup idea is what I find very interesting. That you're able to like gather all these great musicians together and put out an album like The Gathering, which is like, oh, okay, we're going to do death, we're going to do thrash, we're going to throw it all, mix all in the middle, and it's like, wow. So I think it's interesting and they managed to survive too. And
Yep.
that's going to lead into the next question. So this one, I'm sure it's an easy one for both you guys. And that is, do you consider, why were they not, or even should they be considered part of the Big Four? What do you think, Jim?
Absolutely. I'd have a hard time knocking one of them out only because, as I spoke about this before, Anthrax and Megadeth are still really, to me, are diverse enough and still very active. Metallica is very active, and I have to, the first 4 albums of Metallica, I mean, they deserve to be there. And Slayer, even though they're inactive, I mean, Slayer's Slayer. So, but yeah, Testament, you've got Testament, Death Angel, Overkill. I could go through all of the ones we've talked about, but I think they definitely have paid their dues. If anything, they're 5th or 6th in my book. Probably next there with Overkill. I mean, they've paid their dues. They put out a lot of great material, and they keep going. And they tour like crazy. These guys are road dogs, and I just think it's really, really great. And again, too, when you talked about Chuck Billy's vocals, I mean, he is like, we talked about Belladonna's vocals last week and how there's, it's kind of the voice of Anthrax. I mean, Testament, this is just, as soon as you hear it, you know exactly who it is. And I mean, that's so cool. And I think he is one of the more recognizable and probably consistent vocalists out there. You know, and the band is pretty consistent. I mean, there was really no let's jump on a Pantera bandwagon for many albums. Like we're gonna copy what we're. I mean, yes, there was some change there, but I kind of like how they kind of went from low. It's just a pretty good album. I mean, The Ritual's not my favorite. And then they jumped right into Demonics and went right, like Billy was saying, they went from one extreme to another. But I think that's pretty cool because, you know, definitely I think the sort of the landscape was changing by then. And thank God, because, you know, we could only put up with grunge music for so long, you know. So, anyways.
Very true.
Yeah, and I'm glad they didn't put out a grunge album. I'm glad he didn't. They didn't. I mean, yes, you had the whole Pantera, kind of that whole Cowboys era where a lot of bands, like we talked about, you know, Sacred Reich and that, and you know, there was that, but then there was also like, you know, like look at Metallica's Load album. I mean, you know, Lars and Kirk and everybody rolling around in a thing of mud. I mean, give me a break. This is, you know, we're gonna cut our hair and and I'm fine with cutting hair. I don't care, but this is metal, guys. This is weak. We need it to be tough and strong.
Well, they're wearing eyeliner, dude.
Yes.
They had all eyeliner. Come on. You got to do that in a metal band. That's what metal bands do.
That's right.
Oh, God. So what do you think, Billy?
Yeah, I mean, given our this probably shouldn't be a surprise given our discussion last week. But yeah, for me, I mean, I think they should have been part of the Big Four. I would have bumped Anthrax with Testament. I mean, I get why Anthrax was there, but to me, I always felt it should have been Testament. I think at the end of the day, and let's talk about the last sort of 2 decades, right? There's no doubt that Testament and Overkill should be in that top 4, right? I mean, again, the consistency that both of them have been delivering are just, you know, astonishing. And I always thought Testament was certainly in terms of their popularity, probably one notch above Overkill. I mean, certainly over the decades, as I see both live, one has always a much bigger audience.
Right.
It's generally been Testament, but and I probably like Testament a tad more over Overkill. But yeah, I think both those bands, like certainly today, deserve to be in the top 4, and I'd argue Testament deserved to be in there, you know, in the 80s as well. But that's kind of me. And then I don't know if you were going to tackle this question, Ken, but you mentioned it about Chuck Billy, and yeah, I mean, I would just add, to me, he is my favorite thrasher, right? Yeah. I think he's number 1. There's just, if you think, again, we talked about Overkill, and I love Blitz's vocals, but it's pretty one-dimensional. You know exactly what you're going to get. I mean, with Chuck, he could actually sing. He can sing with melody, but he's also incredibly aggressive. And as we're going to talk about, he can also get into the death metal growls. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a no-brainer in my mind that he's the, you know, because again, I love Tom and Slayer too, but again, you can't say Tom's as diverse as Chuck is. No. And I'd also say Chuck, I mean, having seen Chuck, you know, as recent as last week, he still I mean, he sounds great, right? Like he's as good now as he's ever been. So yeah, I don't know if I'm getting a bit off topic, but yeah, I think he's a fantastic singer, and I just love seeing him live. Like when he always has that, like his mini mic stand, and he's like, like air guitar, but at Milwaukee Metal Fest, he did something I never saw him do before. He, instead of doing that, he was sort of doing air drumming. So like during the thing, he was kind of like doing this in midair all the time, right? So that was kind of new for Chuck, but I guess he got tired of the air guitar.
Yeah, maybe. Well, he has a feel good story though, because I mean, you know, the guy gets cancer.
Yeah.
And you know, as soon as anyone announces they have cancer, everyone just thinks the worst. It's just a natural inclination to do that, right? So the fact that he had the cancer, he beat it, and then came back to put out like at least 4-5 stellar albums afterwards. That says something, like that really says something about the person. And yeah, and his vocals haven't waned at all. They still sound great. He doesn't do a lot of the growly vocals as much on the more modern stuff. Like it's there in parts, but I mean, you can't knock his contributions to the vocal department when it comes to thrash metal.
Yep.
He's a really cool dude. And from what I see him in interviews and I've seen him online, yeah, he seems like he's a really down to earth guy, and he really appreciates what he has, and he's pretty much like next to Alex, like the two of them are like they're pretty much Testament. That's their band. Yeah. They're the co-captains, and they make it work. So I mean, technically you're right. They should be in the big four, and I would say for me, the modern version of Testament is better than anything in any other thrash bands put out. I'm sorry, even better than Anthrax, better than all of them. None of them can compare to what they've put out in the last since 2008 onwards. There's no other band in my mind that's as good as these guys, and that's a testament to pardon the pun, but testament. That's to them. I mean, this is shows you what they're about and what they can do as a band. So
yeah. The only thing small thing I'd add there is, like you mentioned Alex and Chuck, but I'd say Eric, right? Like Eric's like the main songwriter with Chuck,
sure, yes,
right?
yes.
So I think Eric did. I mean, he tends to be the quiet one in the band, but he's like, him and Chuck are the main songwriters, right? Alex will come in and do his riffs, but Eric's such a key guy in the band.
Yeah, I could see that. I think that's where maybe the diversity angle comes in, like the death metal, and he's got his black metal band. So I mean, yeah, you're right about that. He would be equally as instrumental in the band and the sound. But yeah, there's nothing bad about this band. This band is like pretty much tops on the heap when it comes to thrash today. All right, so now we'll get down to discussing the album, and we're going to start with the first song, which is DNR, Do Not Resuscitate. And Billy, start us off with this one.
Yeah, so what a great choice for an opener. This one's a complete monster. It's one of my favorite Testament songs, actually. Over the years, I mean, great live track in particular. I mean, I love sort of the opening, like the haunting orchestration. And then you can hear that light sort of drum work taking place, and then it just completely erupts into like a thrashy death kind of a classic, right? Like the riffs are fantastic on this one. I mean, you guys have said it, right? They've gone back to their thrash base, but they're using like little accents of death metal, particularly Chuck in some of his growls. So I think and what I really like when Chuck does that, it actually raises like the aggressiveness level of the song, right? Like, he's intense when he's going like balls out, but when he does that growl, it like brings it to a new level, and shit. You got Dave Lombardo on here, and so you can hear him pounding away in the mix. Lots of interesting kind of work here. And one thing, like a subtle thing, is, I mean, not on every track, but the majority are short, right? So they've written like these brilliant, devastating, brutal tracks, but they don't stay too long, right? They get in, they rip your head off, and they're gone.
And then they get out.
And they leave you wanting more, right? Like, the only thing that again, like, I love the track. If I was going to do a negative, is not really a guitar lead in here, and nor is there in the next song. But I think that maybe I had read that this song was like 95% written this album before James Murphy rejoined. So I have a feeling that there's some great James guitar leads in here, but it's more sparing, right? A lot of songs have like no lead breaks, but still, the song's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a great song. And Jim, I know you like the idea of an opening song on an album. You must love the song.
Oh yeah, this song's legendary. I mean, that ominous intro, like Billy was saying, and then it just rips into some great riffs. I mean, this whole album is a drum track album. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you can hear Lombardo just pound the hell out of this album, and I love it. I mean, and at 2:11 in the song, you've got kind of a really cool bass groove going on. I really really like it. It's an awesome song. I mean, you know, and Chuck's voice, Chuck Billy's voice is just, I mean, holy Jesus, it's just what a way to start off an album. You know, like you just started off with one of the best tracks on the album, in my opinion.
Yeah, I noted that the first growl is where he
Yeah,
really gets it. Like that first growl is like, whoa, what is
yeah.
this? And it just goes from there, right? It's like it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well,
I like it too. Like, sorry?
the first time I listened to this, I thought,
Mhm.
is this going to be like the first time when I listened to it back in when it came out, I was like, oh man, they've changed to a death metal band maybe, and they're going like demonic too. But no, it wasn't like that at all. But still had
No.
elements of a really cool growl and that kind of gruff vocal that I really like.
Yeah, you get it in this song right from the get go, and that's what makes it such a great song as an opening track. And then like they're dipping into like a lot of really darker lyrics on this album. That's the one thing I did notice. I mean, the whole song's about the idea of being trapped in pain and suffering. So it's like, okay, that's kind of stuff you'd see on a death metal, like the kind of lyrics you get on the death metal album. So I could sort of see where they're going in this direction, but lots of up tempo. Like there's just it's nonstop. It doesn't let up. But yeah, as an opening track, it's great. It's really really good. And now we'll go to the second track, which is Down for Life. And Jim, what do you think?
Oh man, another killer track. I mean, this is, I gotta admit, the first what I got number ones by a whole bunch here. Like it's not even funny. So this one here's another kick-ass track. I love the low guttural yelled intro. That is, I mean, he doesn't give up. That vocally, this is another thick vocal, and it's got that Testament thrash vibe. So on this song, even like this is what I think. Obviously, off of Demonic, they didn't have a lot of. There wasn't hardly any thrash on that album, and I mean, yeah, and I can understand why a lot of Testament fans didn't like it. It didn't sound like Testament, but this, even with that guttural singing, sounds like has that Testament vibe, if you know what I mean, musically. And I think it's classic Billy. And what I love about The Gathering is this album kind of kicks off like, okay, we're back to this now. And then since then, it's kind of just morphed into, there may be less of the guttural death metal sound, but it's still back online to massive thrash. That's what I love about it.
Yeah, for sure. And what do you think, Billy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to argue any of that. Again, very short track, right? It's less than 3.5 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Dave really stands out here, right? Like the drumming, he's just pounding away here. He's right in the pocket. I mean, the riffs are fantastic. Again, there's no lead section for me to point to in the second straight song. But again, still great. And like, I do find like Chuck's, he's a little bit more in his thrash voice on a broader bass in the song, but he brings back death. He brings back the growl when he needs to, right? Like at like just past the 1 minute mark, like it all of a sudden slows down the heavy chugging guitar, and Chuck does like full death metal like growl mode.
Yeah, he keys it up.
Yeah, so very cool. So again, the death metal's like approach is enhancing the bass thrash sound, right? And then again, just past 2 minutes, it really cool. Again, it sort of slows down, and then it kind of sounds kind of like, I don't know, like trippy or psychedelic even for like a couple seconds, and then it takes off again, right? But man, like what a big difference. Like most people would argue the greatest Testament albums had a limitation. The old school with like Louis, right? He was a good drummer, but he definitely had his limits, right? And coming back with like Gene, and like not on this album, but they did bring Gene and John Tempesta, and you've got Dave here. I mean, yeah, how could you go wrong with the drummers?
I think Dave had something to prove because this is a few years like after he got turfed from Slayer, and I know he was like sniping with them in the press for a long time.
Yeah, I
He
was
and Kerry did not get along, so he comes to this band, and it's like, okay, I'll start here, and it's great because he's proving that he's still a really really good drummer in my mind, and
yeah.
the fact that Chuck said that a lot of this album is attributed to Dave's sensibilities as a drummer, which helps with that overall kind of nasty sound.
Yeah.
So you can't deny that really when you think about it. But yeah, this is a really good song too. I've always liked this. The growl, that first growl again. I love it when he does the first major growl in a song. It's like, whoa, like he just lets it rip, and it's like, okay, well, we know what we're getting here, and that's what's great about him. And what I also like is he can go from the growl and then back to like a thrash singing. So like that sort of that James Hetfield style of singing. He's able to do that well, and James can't do that, but this dude he can, and that's what makes it so like unique for me, anyways, with the song. All right, so we'll check out our third song here, the Eyes of Wrath. And what do you think, Jim?
Oh, longest song on the album, best song on the album. Love it.
Okay.
I mean, this song has a really cool, what I like about it is it's got that lighter kind of intro, and then around the 1 minute mark, you've got the drums just pound in and a really cool guitar riff. I think his vocals are kind of got that gruff sound to it, but they're clear. So it's hard to like, it's just he does a good balance on this whole album, and this song is total evidence of the fact that I don't know what it is. He just creates that kind of death metal-y groove with his vocals, but it's totally clear. So I mean, you can get a death metal fan liking this, and definitely obviously a thrash metal fan, but I think the song has a really good ebb and flow to it, where it goes kind of heavy to a bit slower, and then around 3:43 it has that wicked guitar solo that breaks into kind of a low, it sounds like a lo-fi scream, and then just sends into a massive riff. So I mean, this album is wicked, or this song is wicked, and I love the fact it's over 5 minutes long, because I think it has to be that. I think you really get a good feel for the ebb and the flow of the song, and I really, really like that. It's my favorite song on the album, although there's a couple more that there's three more that I have number ones by too. So, but anyway.
Yeah. No problem. And what about you, Billy?
Yeah, no, it's a good one. I'm not sure I'd say it's my number one, but it's up there too. Yeah, again, I'd point to that sort of creepy kind of opening.
Yeah.
It's actually interesting because it lasts almost a minute.
Yeah.
So it's quite a long intro that helps contribute to that 5.5 minute song length. But yeah, I mean, I gotta say, I mean, Jim mentioned it, and what I mean, you could say death, you could say thrash, but at the end of the day, this is just one of his most like vicious vocal performances, right?
Yep.
Like he just right off the right off the bat, he's like he's angry, and like there's just something extra vicious about his voice. But yeah, I mean, this is one with, Jim mentioned it, good use of like tempo changes. Like they go back to that intro theme at least two or three times, and like
Yep.
switching between the fast parts and the slowest parts. And as Jim
Yeah.
mentioned, this is the first time we actually get like a lead section, and that's good. James is really good. Obviously, the longer song length gives a bit more time to do that, so that's really cool. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the track. Like I do find it odd, like and it happens in one or two other songs where they do have leads. The leads are very much at the end of the song, and trying to do the lead, and then there's like within 1 or 2 seconds the song's done. So it almost makes me wonder, like, given that the songs were written without James as the lead guitar player, like, did they squeeze these in at the end to get some of it in there, right? Because like they're always in an unusual placing, the leads.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, that's a good point to bring out. I don't know. Maybe
They're
they
still
had a lot
good.
of it. But oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
for sure. But maybe they had, maybe like you said earlier, to one of your earlier points, that they had a lot of this written before he came on. I don't
And
know. I
that's what I
mean,
mean. Yeah, yeah,
it could have been that way.
yeah.
Um, I don't know. It makes it a little bit odd, but it kind of works because it's like you don't expect it, and then you
Yeah.
get this lead at the end. And it's like, oh, that's cool, and then that's it. It's done.
Yeah.
You move on to the next
Yeah.
song. But this one's probably like pretty close to being a death metal song. I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not really a thrash song. I was in my notes. I was writing. It's pretty close to being as death metal as you can get, and those vocals are just like, whoa,
Oh,
they're so monstrous sounding. And again, I can see that they on the songs that are kind of more death metal, you can see that the lyrics are much more darker because
mhm.
they're talking about some kind of destructive beast. So it's interesting, and then they're throwing in the ideas of pain and suffering, and it's like, okay, I can kind of see this being on a death metal, a lot like subject matter for death metal bands. So, and they pull it off. They do a really good job, and they pull it off really well. It's a really good song.
I think that's safe to say too. The production on this album is really,
Yes.
really good.
Yeah.
Well,
I
you have
mean,
Andy Sneap,
the
right?
mix
Andy
on
Sneap
it,
is
yeah, the mix on it's perfect. They brought in the right people. Yeah,
yeah, Andy Sneap who did all the mixing. Yeah, for sure. So like
yeah.
that's his bread and butter. That's his forte. So why not?
Was
Why
this
not?
the first Neat produced Testament album? I know he did
Yeah,
a couple. This was the
it's
first of the
this
run.
is the first.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
yeah. This is the first. Yeah, he didn't. I know he didn't work on Low, and I know he didn't work on the Ritual. But I think he started like doing mixing and production in, I think, in the mid '90s and onwards. So
Mm.
this would have been one of his earlier projects, I think, too. But
Cool.
it's great. They sound great live, and this production is amazing. So we'll go to track number 4, and that's True Believer. What do you think, Billy?
Yeah, not a bad track. Yeah,
Mm,
not one of my favorites either. Again, we get another sort of atmospheric opening
yeah.
that they tended to use on this album. I mean, at one point, Chuck's almost like ballad, like singing,
Hmm.
well, which is pretty different for this album, right? Like at times, it has a ritual feel, but not to the
Mhm.
extreme. It just hints at it, I would say. But kind of at the halfway point, it kind of changes. Again, short song. We're talking 3.5 minutes again.
Mhm.
But then Chuck, in the last half, he gets heavier and into his gruffier range, which is pretty good. But what I do like best about this one is, despite its length, it actually does have a pretty good proggy instrumental section, right? Some good
Yeah.
guitar work again. And like I almost hear like hints of like death. It's
Mhm.
probably James Murphy coming through on that side, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, so it's a solid song, but I wouldn't put it as one of my favorites.
Yeah, I think it's yeah, I can see that. What would you think of it, Jim? Do you like the song as well, or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think. I think there might be one song I'm not super jazzed about on this album,
Mhm.
but this song's really good. I think this song really showcases Chuck's vocals. Like, I think
Mhm.
it, from the lows to the highs, and it's definitely. I like it. I agree with Billy. Probably not. It would be like if I had to rank all the songs, this would be just it'd be in the back half, only because there has to be a back half. But I think it's a
Sure.
great track. It's got great chorus to it, and it's. But I think it really showcases Chuck's vocals, and I think really he pulls it off. And yeah, it's very kind of ritualistic in a way off of the Ritual. I kind of got that vibe, but I did definitely get a death vibe from it, and I think that's pretty cool. But it's again, it's now we're coming into another song, but I'll leave that. But anyways, it's okay.
Yeah, I like the song. I lyrically, again, I like when they dip into the darker side of their music. So like you're talking about someone who gives into evil, which is somewhat of a trope. It's a standard for a lot of thrash bands at this time, singing about that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing to note here though too is this is one of Derek Ramirez's only credits on the album.
Oh.
Now Derek was originally with the band back in I think when they were Legacy, he was part of the band, but then left. But of course, Derek was also one of the guitar players on demonic. So they kind of
Right.
brought him back for this song, which is kind of cool. I like the song. It's not one of my favorites either. Although I do like the growls. I think they work well on this. But there's a lot of more like traditional Chuck Billy singing, which is like harking back to earlier albums, at least I thought. But that's all right. It's nice to have that kind of balance between like clean singing to gruff vocals. So
Mhm.
all right, so we'll go to track number 5, Days in Darkness. Oh, 3 Days in Darkness. My apologies. And Billy, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think it's a killer track. Like I
Yeah.
also really like this.
Mhm.
Chuck is back into his like death metal sort of influence voiced here on this track. It's heavy, it's groovy, but in a
Mm.
good way. It
Yeah.
very much sits in the mid tempo range for me. The crunching guitars, and one thing that's kind of cool is here we get some like backing vocal chanting.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yes.
don't know, chanting's the word, but that takes place. And I don't know, I probably it surprised me when I first heard it, but I think it kind of works, right? It contrasts so well with like Chuck's growling style. So that's pretty cool. Again, like, some good, well-placed tempo changes. And once again, like to my point previously, we actually get like a cool, pretty brief solo, though, this time,
Mhm.
guitar solo, but it's
Yeah.
very much at the end of the song again. But yeah, I think it's a great track.
Yeah. I like it too. The gang shots are kind of like what surprises
Yeah.
a lot of people, I would think. So what do you think, Jim?
Oh, I love this song. This song's got, consider it a doomish thrash masterpiece. And I
Mhm.
love it because it's a bit darker. And I'm not just saying that because it has that in the title, but it's got, I love the whoa, the backup
Yeah.
on it. You don't even know, like, where the hell is this coming from? Because you don't hear it in a lot of Testament songs. And I
No.
like that. But
Yeah.
it's, as Billy said, the groove on this in a good way. It is amazing, and this is one of my top songs on the album. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I think the vocals is what I like about this song the most.
Yeah.
Chuck's like he's at times he's even just like shouting. It's not even singing. It's like he just shouts out the words and it's great. And that growly voice really is fierce. He's really fierce here. This was a bit of a standout song for me in terms of his vocals. I really, really like the vocals on this song. But I agree with both you guys. This is like one of the better songs on the album for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll go to the next track, which is probably I'm going to state this is my favorite song on the album. Legions of the Dead. Of course, the lyrics are about zombies, the dead rising. It's a very short song, but it's
Yeah.
effective. So, what do you think, Jim?
Oh, I forget. This is another.
Yeah.
You're leaving 3 Days into Darkness, then heading into this, and I believe this only has one writing credit on it. I think it's Peterson. Yeah, it's really, really cool. This is a fast drum track, and it's got that sort of. I kind of think it has a little bit of a demonic vocal to it. It's definitely got a black and thrash death metal vibe for me, but I absolutely love it. And that guitar intro is really cool. This is a heavy track, and yeah, it's one of my favorites. You're just blowing away the middle of the album here. It's really cool. It's got great placement on the album, and I just think it's awesome. And I'm glad that it's like it's pretty cool. That Chuck Billy, I find there's not just one or two members just doing all the writing. Peterson does a lot of writing for the band, but it's kind of cool that they spread it around a little bit, and I kind of like that. I think that's pretty cool. So no, it's a great song. I love it.
Yeah. And what about you, Billy?
Yeah, no, I can't argue with you guys. Like this is one case where, we're talking about short songs. Most are 3.5, but this thing's 2.5. So this is one where I really am left wanting more. But yeah, just like, this gets really thrashy. It's like intense right out of the gate. And that sort of main riff is pretty cool. Like it's very technical sounding.
Yeah.
Like it stands out for me. Chuck's like at the start, like his sort of death growl, it's like super long at the beginning. Like, wow, where did that come from? And Dave, I mean, Jim, you mentioned that he's just beating the crap
Oh,
out of that drum kit. Just it's short, but it's effective. And this has, and for 2.5, it actually has a really good guitar lead.
yeah.
But I'll say again, it comes at the very end, just before close again. So, but yeah, I love the track. I really, this is one where I wish they would have expanded more on it, but.
Hmm.
Yeah, so
Because
but
in all fairness, it's the exact same length as the Allegiance. So it's kind of yeah.
Oh yeah, Allegiance is yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes less is more. I don't know. Maybe
Right.
that's you know
Yeah.
you you,
The
you
two and
get.
a half is
I
barely.
get what you're
So,
saying. Like for me, I think this is the best song on the album. For me, it's like it's almost close to being so death metal, in just the way it's written, the style, the growls. It's fast, it's furious. It has everything that I think makes the song work well. But sometimes maybe less is more. But I could take both your points. Like it would be cool if the song was a little bit longer, but
Oh, yeah.
I can I'm but I can it's fine. I think it's fine.
I think less. I think you're right. Less is more sometimes. It
Yeah,
hits you
yeah,
better. Yeah, yeah. I agree with that.
yeah. I think they. I don't know. I guess they maybe on demonic they were trying something totally different, but maybe they decide to kind of go back to kind of basics, but still move forward. So yeah, you kind of acknowledge the classic thrash period, but now you're like,
Mhm.
okay, we're gonna add to it now. We're gonna do a lot of new things here that we didn't do previously, and it makes it pretty unique. Like this song in particular is one of those songs that's like, whoa, okay, Legions of the Dead, that's cool title.
Yeah.
Can't get anything better than that. Now, track number 7, Careful What You Wish For. This is an interesting track. At least I've noted it. What do you think, Billy?
yeah, so interesting is sort of the way I describe it as well. It kind of stands out a bit. So a few
Mm,
things here. Like I think both Dave and Steve stand out. I mean,
mm,
it's actually the only writing credit Steve DiGiorgio has on the whole
yeah,
album. So you
yeah.
definitely get, especially towards the end, some better bass work. I mean, I was actually, to be honest, quite surprised, like having Steve on here. Like his basses, and there's one or two tracks is very prominent, and there's one still to come. But like I mean, usually Steve, the bass is all over the song. So again, this is not a negative, just an observation. But I'm used,
Yeah,
like I love bass,
Same
technical
here.
bass on
yeah,
songs.
yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
that would be something I wish he was here more, but I mean, so be it. But I don't know, like every time I hear this song, like I don't know if it's just me, but I get like a suicidal tendencies like type groove. Um,
Yeah,
and for me, like it always goes back. I always hear "Send Me Your Money" when I listen to this, like a
meh,
death metal version of "Send Me Your Money." I don't know, like maybe I'm crazy, but that's always the
no,
thing I hear in there. But yeah, very different approach compared to the rest of the album. So kudos to them for mixing it up. Chuck is like, diverse vocals and showing off his range. Like I think it's solid. And like I said, towards the end of this one, it's the bass work is really good, right? Like Steve really stands out on this one. So yeah, it's pretty good overall. Yeah.
well, it's definitely a drum track, as Jim likes to
Mhm.
say. This is
Yeah.
definitely you can hear a lot of Dave Lombardo all over this song. So that I think that's kind of interesting too. I like the groove. It's catchy, but it's kind of groovy at the same time.
Yeah.
And I like when he's like, "Hey, we live in a fucked up world." I kind of like that the way he sings that. It's like, but I could kind of see maybe where there's some comparisons to Suicidal. I could sort of
Yeah. And I don't
see.
think Dave was in Suicidal at this point. I think that was later.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
later. So yeah, but I like this song quite a bit. It's pretty solid. What do you think, Jim?
You guys nailed it. I mean, I have written down it's a killer drum track. It's got a wicked groove to it. I mean, there's really not much else I can say that you guys have already covered. It is an interesting track, and no, I like it. And you're coming out of Legions of the Dead, which is just an absolute killer track, and then jumping into this one, I think it's pretty good. I still have another for sure big favorite coming up soon. So, anyways, but no, it's a great track. I like it.
Cool. All right, so why don't you take us into track 8, Riding the Snake, Jim?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's got that sort of soft acoustic intro, and then the riff cuts in and the drums. And it's got a killer chug to it. I think it's a good song. Probably not like one of my tops. I mean, if I have to break the album down, it's just a good, consistent song, and I really like it. It's good. I like it.
Yeah, I could see that. And what about you, Billy?
Yeah, it sounds like I like this one maybe a bit more than my friend Jim here, but yeah, I mean, I really like this song. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff. Right? Again, Jim mentioned the acoustic opening, but this thing really explodes from that acoustic opening into it catches me off guard every time I hear it. But this is the other track I was talking about, right? This is the first time we get Steve fully opening up, and oddly enough, he doesn't have a writing credit on this one. So,
no, he doesn't.
I mean, he sounds amazing on that. So that to me elevates the song to the top. But I also get like a real, not so much the album, but the actual title song. Like I get this Souls of Black, like the actual song kind of groove in this. Like I keep hearing that, and I think of that when I hear this song. But it's a great one. And I also listen carefully, maybe not as much in the vocals, but you can actually pull out like old school Testament thrash in this song, right? Like things that would have come off the first like 2 albums, but obviously with the new vocals and the modern sound and such. But that's why I find there's so many unique pieces to Riding the Snake that it really elevates it for me.
Well, that galloping riff in the second half, I like because it's almost reminds me. It's almost like you're hearing a snake move. It's just there's something about the way that it just pushes through. And then also at the end, there's this kind of almost it ends with like a kind of Slayer vibe to it. I almost get like, oh, this is Slayer right at the end, which I find kind of odd, but it ends well. I think the song is good. I'm with you, Billy. I like the song because I like the metaphors of the snake and the idea, like basically it's about drug addiction, so they're using the snake as a metaphor. So I kind of like that. It works for me. Billy and Chuck Billy and Peterson wrote it, so that's kind of interesting. They have a really good connection for like writing songs. I think this is a really good song. I like it quite a bit. So we were just talking about this earlier, so we'll go to Allegiance. And what do you think, Jim?
Yeah, it's a good song. Fast galloping drum. That drum beat again is just so wicked, and that guitar. I love the wail on that guitar where they kind of at this just a little bit after it starts, kind of makes that really cool riff. And Chuck's vocals on this stand out big time as well. I mean, he's got kind of a cool echo effect to it too, like towards the mid to the end of the song. I really, really like it. I think it's a good track. And it's funny because, it's the exact same length. It's 3 Days in Darkness at 2:37, which is kind of interesting. But no, definitely a great track. I love it.
Yeah, and this is Dave Lombardo's other writing credit on the album.
Yes,
so you can hear him all over the song too.
Oh yeah.
And what do you think, Billy?
Yeah, I don't know. Like to be honest, it's my least favorite song on the on the album. It's kind of an unusual song, right? Like, yeah, I also note the echoing effect on Chuck's vocals is kind of cool. The chorus is kind of catchy, but I don't know. I mean, it keeps me engaged, and like I wouldn't say cut it, but at the same time, it's 2.5 minutes, right? So you can only sort of take it so far, and
true.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, it's all right. I don't mind the song. It's not one of my favorites either, but it's okay. It has its moments. It's catchy in parts to some degree. I mean, I can live with it. The next song is one of my other favorite songs in this album.
Same here.
Someone Shut Eyes. This thing is incredible. What a song. What do you think,
Yeah.
Jim?
Oh, I fucking love this song. This song is, we're right back to the top of Testament's game again, you know, and I mean, it, I kind of still has that blackened vocal sound, but I still, the drums on this song are phenomenal. And I think it's the third or fourth longest. So it's over 4 minutes. So you got time to really kind of bash it out. And I mean, it's just got that thrash chug that Testament is so famous for. I mean, this is kind of right where it's at. And yeah, this is one of my top songs on the album as well. I just absolutely love it. And I love the name of the song. The title is so freaking cool. And that just gets you going. Yeah, it's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And Billy?
Yeah, also one of my favorites, right? Like I mean so much to say here, right? Like Chuck Billy's like vocals, and this just might be his like harshest vocals
I
on
would
the
agree with
album,
that.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, like totally. So that takes care of Chuck. He's fantastic. This actually has like some death metal backing vocals.
Yes.
We
Yes.
haven't seen a whole lot of that on the album, so that's cool. There's a great sort of technical musical section coming in at about 2 minute mark that just turns into like a fantastic guitar lead. That's really cool. Like it sort of slows down at the end, and we get DiGiorgio's cool bass lines, and then right after that is that drum section, right? It's almost like Dave decided to do a drum solo, like in the middle of the song, right? Those marching drums, and yeah, it's really cool. Like killer riffing. Like this song has it all.
Yeah, it's a death metal song to me. That's what I put a little asterisk beside my notes because it's like, yeah, this is like a death metal song. It's very, very close to being that. And yeah, it's such a great song. And again, you know, when they get these darker lyrics about hate, control, and how when you hate, you can be controlled, and you know, it gets the best of you. So I like those kind of songs when they're that angry and they just want to rip a song for like, you know, 3 minutes or 4 minutes. But for 4 minutes, it's a good length.
You know what, though? I mean,
Yeah.
it's what you exactly said is, you know, the whole downfall of the Sith Lords in Star Wars, because the hate controlled them to where it was at their demise.
Sure. Well, you got a Star Wars reference in there. That's all right. That's cool.
Yeah.
Hey, why not?
I'm not sure I follow that, but I'm not a Star Wars guy. But
If you're not,
I'll take your word
if
for
Star
it.
Wars, you'll get it. But yeah, that's okay.
Sorry, guys.
That's all right. No worries. No problem. So the last song on the album, which I think is the best song to end off this album, "Fall of Sippledom." What do you think, Billy?
Yeah, no, I agree, right? I mean, to me, it's like, I mean, it's hard to say, but I mean, probably my two favorite songs might be the opener and the closer. Although there's one or two also on here that competes hard for best songs. But yeah, this is a great one, right? Like close is strong. I mean, you actually get some cool intricate guitar work at the open of the track, but here you get like some great like heavy thrash riffing.
Yeah.
Dave just ripping your head off with his drumming. It's so good. Chuck is back in his like deep death metal roar mode here. You know, good use of tempo changes, breaks it up. Like I love that. Like they go into these slow riffs at about 3 minutes. This has outstanding lead work by James. Dave's a superstar. I already said it on the track. Just again, like a perfect closing track.
Yeah, oh, for sure, for sure. And what do you think, Jim? I'm sure
Yeah.
you must love this ending.
Oh yeah, it bookends the album. I mean, you got the start and the finish so strong. This is, you know, a lot of bands should really look at this album and be like, okay, this is what we need. We need a superb, like balls out start, and we need to finish it on that same high, and that's what they do, you know. And I mean, yeah, that heavy intro. I mean, this has got everything to it. It's almost like they said, let's just go all out to finish it off. And I think that's exactly how it feels for me. I mean, that thrash vibe this is Testament again, another song that is just so Testament like, if you know what I mean. And I mean, yeah, what a way to end off the album.
Well, they definitely hark back to Practice What You Preach, because the song is about global warming. So it's kind of interesting how they sort of circle back to that album with that kind of a theme. Yeah. And Simple Dome actually refers to an ice dome that's found in the Antarctica. So I thought that's kind of interesting. So the whole song is just basically like, what if we have like an ice age again, or like this happens and the world is doomed. So it's kind of interesting that they went back to that. But it's a great way to end this. It's a good way to end the album. It's pretty solid. And so on the Japanese reissue, they have Hammer of the Gods as well. What do you guys think of that song as an instrumental? Yeah, that's kind of how
it's kind of repetitive to me. It's almost like it's very circular, and I guess it's kind of space agey. I guess, I don't know. I wrote a few notes down. I found it it's got a good heavy beat, but it's just kind of very repetitive for me, and I think it's unfortunately a little irrelevant for the album. I do have the edition with this on it, but it doesn't really add anything for me. I would have rathered a live track of something off this album. One of the really heavy hitters live would have been really cool.
Yeah, I would agree. And do you like it, Billy, or what do you think?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's like a bonus track, right? Like, I have a CD version, the original without it, because don't forget, 90s growing up in North America, we had very little vinyl in the 90s, right? Vinyl was dead. Like, our friends in Europe still had the vinyl coming out, but so my vinyl copy is the reissue with that track. It's okay, but I don't really consider it part of the album. The band didn't intend for it to be there. I'm not fussed one way or the other.
All right, so I guess we all in the same camp on that one. I don't really care for it either. It's odd. It's just so odd as a bonus track. It's like, well, you could have picked something else. Even a live song or something like would have been more interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. Like, anyone know off the top of their head how long the album is? Like, do you even need a damn bonus track?
No, you didn't. I don't think you needed it. I don't know. It's 42 minutes long. 42 minutes, 40 seconds. So,
feels
that's a good length. What's that?
I was going to say, like, when I listen to it, I don't normally say, "Oh, this feels short." But I don't know. At 42 minutes, I guess. I mean, it's got like, I mean, the songs are short, so I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I think it's the perfect length for an album. It's not boring. It never gets boring. Like, every song's great. I don't know. I think the length of it's fine. It's when you get into like the 25 or 30-minute mark, like, okay, that's just not an album. When you think, I know it's you get Slayer with like 27 minutes, but a proper album to me is like at least 45 minutes. 40 to 45 or 50. Yeah. That's the trouble I find with a lot of these thrash bands now is it's this, they're so long in the tooth with these 1 hour opuses.
No.
Exodus. Like, why are we doing 1 hour albums? Testament, not Testament, but like Metallica. Like, what's with the 1 hour opuses? Like, I don't get it.
Or even Maiden, right? Who were known for short, like, great songs. Now, like, they're almost all like 10 minutes long.
Yeah, and they're boring as hell.
Yeah.
I like Maiden, but they're so boring.
I'm with you.
God, it's like, why can't you just give me a 5-minute song and that we can hear? But this is the one thing about modern metal that I don't like is these long 8, 9, 10-minute songs. I don't get it. I don't quite understand what the fascination is with this kind of stuff.
It's weird, and I find fans are split. Like, I got into it over the Metallica album a lot. People were like, how can you say it's bloated? And I said, I can say it's bloated because it's bloated, and in my opinion. And I said, they're like, but if you're a fan, you want more. Yeah, but sometimes less is more. And I think, and I keep harking back to that last Def Leppard album. And it was absolutely dreadful. It's like 18 songs on it. It's like, let's just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And that's not what it should be. It should be 10 to 12 songs, keep it around 45 minutes long, and no bloat. No, this is all Class A material. Like, your you've written, like, I don't know, for a normal album, 15, 20 songs, pick the best, and then if you want to do something, add some bonus tracks on a re-release or save, whatever. But I just think it's, and unless it's a bonus track that brings, if you're going to do a really obscure, cool cover, I'm cool with that. If something live, even something from I think with Metallica, and not to hark on them, but I think that they should bring out, like, their next album should have something from Kill 'Em All Live from way back in '83 or something, just to kind of throw a teaser on there. You got all these new fans that are buying this stuff, new metalheads that are, that may not necessarily, Metallica is a bit of a poor example, because I'm sure most people know who they are, but you want to throw something on there as a teaser to get them to go back, and I think that's so important. So many bands miss that,
Yeah, you're right about that for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so that wraps up the album portion of The Gathering. So we've gone through it. I guess we all pretty much like it. I wouldn't think anyone would rate it under a 10 if we were asked to rate it. I'm pretty sure we wouldn't. But okay, so we'll move into our last segment for this podcast, and that is the album ranking for the band. And who wants to go first today?
I don't
Jim,
mind.
Billy? Okay, go, Billy.
Yeah, unless you want to go, Jim, but
No, I went last week. You go first.
Yeah, that's right. Go for it, Billy.
Yeah, so for me, and this may have come out at the beginning, but for me, my 12 albums we're ranking today.
Yeah.
So for me, my 11 and 12 are, I guess, in my view, the only I'll say bad albums in my view for Testament. The other 10 are all fairly strong, right? There's lots to like, and even though we may rank them differently, like, I certainly can't call them, like, bad albums. So for me, I've sort of pulled my albums here, but I'm only missing one, which is my number 12, The Ritual from 1992. At the end of the day, it just never connected with me. Like, that thrash sound that I loved is so diluted. The fastest songs are like mid-pace at best. It's so melodic. Like, it was one of those things when I heard this, it was like listening to the Black Album for the first time, right? Like, I wanted to pick up the pace, right? But I also know a lot of people who love it. So what can I say, right? It's just not what I wanted from a Testament. And yeah, unfortunately, from a vinyl perspective, it's the rarest Testament record, right? Like, again, 90s in general are very hard on vinyl in North America, but like, everything's been reissued like multiple times in the Testament catalog, but this. So yeah, nothing. Copies go for a couple $100 if you can find them. Actually, Ken and I went to a record show where I was trying to chase this down because they had a copy, despite me not liking it. I wanted to finish off the collection, but we got there too late. Someone else bought the damn thing. So that's my number. That's my number 12. So number 11 for me, I may have hinted on it already. So for me, it's Demonic. Just goes too far, like in the death industrial kind of sound. For me, I feel the band was in like an identity crisis here. Eric wrote pretty much the whole album, including the guitar leads. Eric's a better rhythm player, so I don't need Eric playing the guitar lead. So not for me on that record. Number 10 for me is the latest, Titans of Creation, and I can't really pinpoint why I got it ranked so low. Again, like I said, the top 10 are all good. It just for some reason hasn't connected with me as much as the couple more recent or the couple before it in the modern sort of era of the band. And I guess I kind of come to, like, maybe it's just like I'm getting that, like, it's becoming a bit scripted, the Testament style in the modern era. It's all good, but I think we talked about that maybe with Destruction, where it was just all sort of, they started to blend in, all good albums. but they're starting to blend into style. They may need to mix it up a little bit. So that's my number 10. Again, it was getting hard here, 8 and 9. Like, so I've got in 9, I went Brotherhood of the Snake. It could be 8. A great killer record. This one's pretty intense, really thrashy. I find energetic. Yeah, great track. And this thing has Gene Hoglan and Steve DiGiorgio, right? So rhythm section to die for there. Then I got where am I? Number 8, Dark Roots of Earth. Again, I think this is a great one. Strong modern era thrash. Here we got Gene Hoglan jumping in on the drums. Interestingly, this is the last Greg Christensen album on bass. That was a nasty breakup too. You mentioned Dave breaking. They both had the same comments, right? They got paid diddly squat for all their work, right? They were all money and they got dirty in public. But yeah, lots of great tracks there, like Native Blood and Rise Up, even though it's simple. American Hate, the title track. It's a really good one. Then I got number 7, which is, I guess, the official sort of thrash comeback album of 2008. Getting back to the thrash roots, but Chuck still uses his growls effectively. He's coming back from cancer. Ken already talked about that. So great stuff. This actually has Paul Bostoff on drums. So really good. I had a note here, something about I guess I wrote this down. But Zetro, oddly enough, has half the credits. The lyrics, which was kind of odd, right? But then for number 6, I'm actually going to go low. This one I mean, it's not 100% consistent, but has a lot of great songs, like the title track, Hail Mary, PC. I love Dogface Gods. That's probably the best track on the album. It's interesting. This is dedicated to Chris Olivia of Sabotage.
That's right. Yeah.
After his passing, and oddly enough, Alex went to Sabotage. So Alex was playing with Sabotage. So that's kind of a funny thing. But this we talked about it, kind of a mix of thrash, death, groove metal. It's got a bit of everything. Then for my number 5, I go to Souls of Black. Talk about a killer album cover on this one. The thing that sort of holds it back for me, I think the worst production. It is so damn thin and hollow. It's almost painful to to listen to. And songwriting's good, but I think in fairness, it's a step down coming off of New Order and Practice What You Preach. But what is really good is sort of the guitar work is brilliant. Some of the most technical and progressive guitar playing on Testament tracks. The title track, Malpractice, Face in the Sky, Falling Fast, just great album. Then where we just talked about, for me, comes in at number 4, The Gathering. So we just spent a lot of time, not going to dive into that. This could be a surprise, but maybe not based on our earlier chat. I kind of go The Legacy for number 3. I mean, this is like everybody, so many people, they're number 1. But like I often say, like just the songwriting is not as mature as they would get on the next 2. So I just can't put it first. The production is the most raw. They're not as good instrumentally as they're going to get coming up. So that's why I went that. But still a lot of great classic songs. For me, number 2, Practice What You Preach. I personally think this is the peak of their songwriting skills. It's funny how many times I see this on like Testament rankings, and it's always at the bottom of the pack, and I just don't understand it. Yeah.
Wow.
Like I don't get it. Even some huge channels rank this like really low, but I don't get it. I mean, so many. I mean, Practice What You Preach is a staple Testament song, but Time Is Coming, Blessed and Sins of Omission. I mean, Ken will probably talk about it, but I've got a lot to say lyrically on this album.
Yeah, it's a great album.
So yeah, just an excellent album, and so obviously no surprise.
Mhm.
My favorite is the New Order. Like I just don't think they've ever come close to the songs on here. I've said it in a few cases, like Disciples of the Watch and The Preacher
Yes,
are like two of my all-time favorite songs. But then you got Into the Pit and
Into the Pit.
Trial by Fire, and like I mean, maybe
Yeah.
the Aerosmith cover is not my favorite. It's still a good cover, but
Mm.
what the hell? It's on there, so nothing I could do. But yeah, but the interesting thing is, I'd still say like 50% of this album is still in regular rotation on the set list. So I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
says what fans think. So that's my number one. And really quick, we didn't rank it, but for people here,
Oh yeah,
First Strike is still deadly.
yep.
It's interesting. It's a remake of stuff, but still worth having. I think there's some interesting stuff on here. But again, not really a new album, so we didn't rank.
Zetro, don't forget, sings 2 songs,
Yeah, Zetro,
Right.
yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I think was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All
Yeah.
right, not bad, Billy. My list is pretty close to yours,
Okay.
except for a couple. There's a couple of changes, but
Okay.
we'll get to that. Jim, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, my list is all over the place.
Okay,
We only had
go
So
for it.
anyways, my number 12 is The Ritual. Billy covered pretty much every album's high and low here, but it was probably my least favorite. My number 11, believe it or not, Billy, you'll be upset, is Low. Although it is a good album, I just think I like all the other albums that much better. And I'm a fan of Demonic, so it's kind of funny because I go against a lot of the grain with that. Number 10 would be Souls of Black. Great album, but I agree with you 100%. I think it's the production of this album that really slams it for me. It got some great songs on it. It's just, it needs a total redo. Like, I don't know, it needs a total cleanup in my mind. Number 9, Titans of Creation. Great album, just where it falls. Number 8, Dark Roots of Earth. Number 7, believe it or not, is my Demonic album. I actually like this album, and like I'm always sticking up for it online. Every time somebody puts it on as a, this came out in 97, it's its anniversary, everybody's, I hate it, it's the worst one, and I'm always sticking up for it. I love Murky Waters on it's a wicked song, but I gotta give them, I like it because I gotta give them credit. I mean, they went from one extreme to another. Totally agree, but I think they kind of made it work for me anyways. Number 6, Brotherhood of the Snake. Great album. The artwork on it's fantastic. I love this album. Great album. Number 5, The Formation of Damnation, 2008. Really, really like it. And so I'm in my top 4 now, so it's kind of funny. I go with my 4th is Practice What You Preach. Love this album, but my number 3, The Gathering, I just like it that much better. I think Practice What You Preach has got all the main songs on it, but I just think The Gathering is just such a good album. It's my number 3. My number 2 is The Legacy. A little bit more of a purist. I always like the kind of the startup albums. Like I think last week my top album would have been Fistful, or it was maybe my second album, but I'm always loving the original first album. But yeah, number 1, you can't argue, it's The New Order. It has to be that. I mean, this is such an awesome album. It's a landmark album and one of my favorite thrash albums of all time. I think it's this, you're looking at this as they come out of the Legacy, and then it just keeps getting better and better and better. And the New Order is my favorite. I love it. So we have the same number 1.
Okay. Cool. All right. So I'll start with number 12, and I have Demonic as the one that I like the least. Has a couple of songs that I think are all right. Murky Waters is okay. The Burning Times is all right. I don't mind the cover. I think it's interesting, but the album itself doesn't do anything for me. Number 11, I have The Ritual. Again, it's the Black Album, or the Black Album Part 2, if you want to call it that. But Monkey See, Monkey Do, I guess it was a thing to do in the early '90s with thrash, but it's all right. Like I don't mind Return to Serenity. The sermon's okay. Like, it's all right, but I don't know. I don't listen to it a lot. And then number 10 is Low. So it's all right. Dogface Gods is pretty good. Like I like that song a lot. It is the first James Murphy album, so that's got to count for something. So I don't mind it. Number 9 is Brotherhood of the Snake. Now this is where I was sort of agreeing with Billy that yeah, some of the modern Testament albums are good, but they do tend to kind of all sort of like slide into each other. Like there could be a bit more variation. This album is not bad. I mean, it has the Pale King, which I like a lot.
Yes.
Born in a Rut's okay. There's some okay songs on it, but yeah, you could kind of see where maybe the template's getting a little stale by this point in time, but it's still good thrash overall. Number 8, I put Formation of Damnation. I like this album a lot, but I kind of feel like it's missing something. It's a return to the band, so it's like it's going back away from the Gathering into more traditional thrash, but I like it. It's got like More Than Meets the Eye, Henchman Ride, Killing Season, Fear. It's got some good songs on it, but it's okay. Number 7 is Titans of Creation. Now, I do like this album. I do like Dream Deceiver, Night of the Witch, Children of the Next Level. There's a lot of really good songs in this album. It's got a little bit of a New Order vibe to it. Now, it's not New Order by any stretch of the imagination, but I kind of felt it sort of harks back to some of the earlier stuff. And then at number 6, I have Souls of Black. I would agree with you guys both. It's got the worst production on the planet. It's echoey. The guitars are super thin, and it does have a interesting thrash sound. Like the music is great. It's just the way it was recorded. Pits. Whew, awful.
I wonder if they
5,
rushed it.
yeah. They might have.
Oh, they did actually, because
yeah.
that was the one they were rushing to get out on the that big tour, right? What was that tour called?
Oh, you're talking about
Clash of the Titans?
Yeah, like if they
yeah.
didn't get that done in time, they were off the tour. So yeah, Chuck actually said.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah, I can see that. Number 5, I have The Gathering. I like the album, but the next 4 I just like a little bit better. Number 4, I have The Legacy. So I like the album, but I don't know. It's got some decent songs, but I don't like to play it that often. Number 3, now this is where I put Dark Roots of the Earth. I think it's a modern thrash classic. I think there's a lot of really good stuff. I saw this tour when they came to Toronto. It was a great show. Native Blood, Rise Up, American Hate. It's got some really good songs on it. Catchy for me. Some may not find it catchy, but I like the cover. I like the album. It's pretty strong. And now Billy and I match here. So Practice is number 2, which is a pure. I know we were on another podcast and we talked about it, but this is like, I would agree with Billy. This is like them at their peak. The songwriting is great. The music is great. It's a really solid album. One of my favorites. And then at number 1, of course, it has to be the New Order. How could you not pick that as your number 1? I mean, Into the Pit and Disciples of the Watch, 2 of the greatest thrash songs ever. You can't get anything better than that. Trial by Fire is really good. The Preacher, yeah, it's a great album. So that's where I put my rankings.
What about the you guys the ballad on Practice? What do you think?
I don't mind it. I know we discussed this last time. I know. It's all right. It's not one of my. I think wasn't the Blake. He didn't like it at all. I think wasn't it like.
Actually, I don't think it was
Billy.
just the 3 of us who did that. I wasn't the biggest fan, I guess.
I thought Blake was with us.
Okay. No, it was the 3 of us.
The 3 of us? Yeah. I'm not a huge. I wasn't a huge fan of it. I don't mind it, but yeah, I could take
Chuck's vocals. Like he does a lot really well. Yeah. I'm just not sure he's a great ballad singer, but
no. I would think not. But there are
some expressive guitar work, and there's other sort of positives to it.
I think he took a chance.
Yeah, they took a chance. I think you're right, Jim. They took a chance. It doesn't mean it works, but
No, and I
Yeah.
think it was more because they had a video to go along with it, and I think it was that might have been like, hey, listen, we can throw this on in heavy rotation, which it was, because I mean it was like on all the Headbangers Ball and on the Power Hour and that they played the hell out of it.
Why Metallica opened the doors, right? As soon as they
That's
started
true.
doing, soon as you start getting like Fade to Black and slower songs, you know that all these record labels are gonna push this on thrash metal bands.
And
But yeah,
remember,
yeah,
during just regular metal, well, hair metal and that, it was there was the ballad, and then there was we're gonna put 2 ballads on, and then hey, why don't we do 3 ballads? So it's funny that even a thrash metal band is like, okay, let's do a ballad. Yeah, I thought it was it's not bad. It's just not my favorite, but anyways,
I'll still go on record and say the best thrash metal ballad ever is from Act 3, Death Angel with a View.
I would agree. Yeah, that's a really good song. Yes.
Like Mark sounds amazing on that track,
yeah.
right? Like you would never think his voice like on the Ultra Violence was going to produce that.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good song. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
That's a
I don't care who's singing
song.
it. It's just a good song.
Yeah.
But then again, I like Bored. I love that song.
Yeah,
I love Bored.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan. That's the only Death Angel album I struggle a bit with.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, I like the funky
Bored.
side to it, though. I don't mind the fun part.
See, that's what I like about it, because Bored was like, okay, this is kind of cool. It's different for a thrash metal song to be. I like that song. I don't know, for some reason, I like that album a lot. But I think Act 3 is a good album.
Did you guys, speaking of like funky kind of metal, and did you guys like Mordred?
They're all right.
Yeah,
they're okay. They were different. They were different.
Yeah,
they brought something different to the table. I wouldn't say I'm a huge fan, but I mean, from what I've heard, I didn't mind. I don't mind it.
Yeah,
they're different. But yeah. So, anyways, I think our rankings are sort of close.
Yeah.
At least we all agree that New Order is number 1.
Oh yeah.
So we all agree there. Thank God for that, because I couldn't see any other album not being number 1. Because you have to admit, like, Into the Pit, Disciples of the Watch. Holy shit, yeah, that's a great song. I always like Into the Pit as well. That song is always like I see it in the mosh pits. People go crazy for that song.
Yeah.
Let's see why they play it.
Yeah.
We'll see what they do with this Kreator tour. It should be interesting in the fall.
Oh, that'll be cool.
Yeah, it should be good. I'm looking forward to it. I've seen Testament like 8 or 9 times already.
I've seen them once.
You've seen them once? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I won't even ask you, Billy, because you've probably seen them thousands of times.
Yeah, no, that's a band that like tours all the time, right? So I'm all like, and they do all the festivals, and so yeah, like endless number of times. But like the one thing I'll say that rubs me a little bit the wrong way, and I know we're sort of at the end, but like Testament is often toured with Exodus and Death Angel.
Right.
Now you get these shows, all the members from Death Angels walk out and talk to everybody. You get Zetro and Exodus. Zetro's out talking to everybody. Not so much Gary. He's always hiding away. But then you get Testament, who run and never come out and sort of talk with people, and I've also done 2 meet and greets with them. Like one in fairness, it was sort of coming out of the COVID period, but we were largely out. And you had Death Angel came out and met and talked with everybody, and so did Exodus. And it was so disappointing. Like Testament stood on the stage and everybody had to stand way back on a barrier on the floor and talk to them like way up like that, right? And you were actually paid a lot of money for that. Like that was a total waste. And then take the tour. What was that album called? Here, I got to go to my ranking. It's escaping me. Dark Roots tour. I did same thing, the VIP tour, and there the band came out, and they couldn't have been any more disinterested in meeting and talking to people. Like just like talking the bare minimum. Yeah, sign your thing. Like Chuck's like, oh yeah, I actually had them sign my Whackin' shirt because they did it, and Chuck was just like, oh, bad weather, eh? Okay, and then he moved my shirt down and gave it to the next guy to sign. Like, just
Lovely.
like yeah, I think as much as the fans love them, like I'll just say they're not good at showing the love back. And there's always a cost to everything they do for the fans. So I don't know, just something I think was worth saying. When their peers who've been around as long as them often are doing the opposite things.
Yeah, Dark Roots. When I saw the Dark Roots tour in Toronto, Chuck
That's
was
where
actually.
I saw it. We were
Oh,
probably together.
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, but Chuck was he was sick that night, or apparently he got sick, or I think it was the same night
I
that
don't know.
somebody was sick, because I remember that, and I made a comment because I was on the guest list, so I got in. My wife and I went to the show, and I got in, and I made this comment on Noel's. On the inertia page on
Oh, yeah.
Facebook, and he got mad. He's like, "Well, you didn't pay for your ticket." And I'm like, "Well, I mean, who cares? I mean, the bottom line is I'm writing a review about the show, and I just kind of felt, yeah, it was a little off at times, but I don't know why people were getting their like panties in a bunch. It's kind of stupid."
But
I
again,
saw
they're
them
always
kinda-
great live. They're just not great as good with the fans, I find. I think that's a fact.
I saw them by accident. So I was supposed to. It was Suicide Silence, Machine Head, Slayer, and Megadeth.
Okay.
And Machine Head had some issues. I think somebody was in rehab or they were sick. Anyways, Testament got swapped out, which was a better swap out in my mind. So I got to see them do like a 45-minute set right before I think I don't know. I think Slayer went on first, so it was pretty cool.
Okay, that's cool. That sounds like a pretty good lineup.
Yeah. It was the what was it, 30-year, 25-year for Seasons, and the same for Rust in Peace. So they did the whole album in its entirety.
Cool. Oh, nice. Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. All right, guys. Before we wrap up, is there any other question, or not questions, but any other thoughts you want to add to tonight?
All good.
I'm good.
All good. All right. So next week we will be back with another album. We are doing Megadeth's Rust in Peace, and our good buddy here, Jim, is going to be hosting the show.
Yay!
Not that I want to put any pressure on you, Jim, but
not at all.
Jim is going to take the reins, and Billy and I will go along for the ride.
Great, awesome! I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. That's a really good pick. It's a good record, so I'm sure we'll have lots to talk about this album.
Oh yeah.
All right, guys. I guess we'll sign off here so we can go get some sleep. And with that, have a good night.
All right.
Night.